Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today, I bring you Cameron Myler. Cameron is a four-time Olympian and flag bearer for the United States at the 1994 Winter Olympics in Lillehammer. At age 16, she became the youngest member of the U.S. women's national luge team. She went on to graduate cum laude from Dartmouth while still training and later got her law degree from Boston College. Cameron has served both as on the U.S. Olympic Committee Board of Directors and as a member of the International Olympic Committee's International Olympic Academy in Olympia, Greece. And as an attorney, she's a frequent commenter on sports and legal issues and has been quoted in multiple media outlets, including the New York Times, Washington Post, and ESPN. She currently serves on the Court of Arbitration for Sport based in Switzerland. And Cameron is a member of the Faculty for Sports Law and Governance at NYU. And for my listeners who are regular listeners, you know that you can grab the action plan from this episode as well as every other episode if you go to jimharshawjr.com/action. That's jimharshawjr.com/action. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Jim. Happy to be here.
I am so glad that we got connected. I think Josh Spodek is the one who connected us. I've actually had Josh on the episode on the podcast here twice now. Just incredible stuff, and anybody he recommends, I definitely listen to. So you've got an amazing background. Let's start with this, Cameron.
And just one correction to the bio. I was 15 when I made the national team, 15. Not 16.
Wow. Okay. I don't know where I got that, but wow, that's incredible. 15. So we're going to talk about that. So how do you get your start in luge when you're, I guess, obviously younger than 15? Like, how did you get your start in that sport? I mean, it's not a sport that I was ever exposed to, and I think most people aren't, but tell me how you got your start.
Yeah, a lot of people ask that question, and I grew up in upstate New York, about an hour east of Lake Placid, and I had the good benefit of having parents who encouraged me to try a lot of things. And when the Olympics were held in Lake Placid in 1980, they volunteered at the luge track, and I went with them. So I saw the best athletes in the world competing in luge. And at the time I was 11, I'd been ski racing by that time probably for 4 or 5 years already. So after the games, there was a 2-week training camp. Anyone could try luge. And my parents let me skip school, go to luge camp, and I loved it from the very first time I was on the sled. I got on it. I loved it. By the end of the 2 weeks, I was sliding from the women's start where the Olympic athletes were competing from, and I won the junior Olympics race in my age group. So I got invited back, and that was the beginning of the, I guess, next 18 years of competing in luge for me.
Gosh, that's incredible. So when you're an 11-year-old and you get on a luge sled, they call them a sled? Is that right?
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Is it like just a fun sled ride the first trip down? And then, where does it go from there? Because it's obviously not just a sled ride down. Maybe the first time is kind of fun, but most people probably don't realize how technical it is. I know with wrestling, my sport of choice, a lot of people think it's just about being big and strong. Well, it's not. It's more of a martial art. It's so much more technical than that. Tell us about luge.
Well, one misconception I think people have of luge, especially if they've just seen it on TV, is that, you just lie there on the sled and go down a track. Not quite the case. So with luge, there are essentially two components of the competition and of the run. So at the start, Luge is the sliding sport where you lie on your back and go feet first down the track. And I just want to note it is the fastest of all of the sliding sports. So we go faster than bobsleds, even though they don't like to admit it.
How fast do you go?
The fastest I went was about 86 or 87 miles an hour.
Wow, that's insane.
Yes, people have accused me of being that too, but not too much. So luge, at the start, you sit on the sled. There are handles that you pull off from, and that's a technique that everybody practices essentially all summer long before you even get on ice for the competition season. And you wear spikes on your fingertips, so you pull off from the handles, paddle down the ramp depending on how long and how steep it is. So maybe 2 to 4 times you paddle, and then you lie down on the sled. After that, it is all skill and how well you can drive the track. And tracks differ in their nature. So they range from sort of Autobahn, very fast, not so much driving. There definitely is some involved, but not a lot. And then the other end of the spectrum is really technically difficult. Like if you don't steer at the right place at the right time, you will crash. So I actually excelled on those tracks that were really difficult. I found them to be a really fun challenge. But those are essentially the two components of a track, and each run, depending on the track, ranges anywhere from like 40 to 48 seconds in length, something around there.
Did you ever experience any gnarly crashes?
Well, yes, everybody, it's inevitable. Everybody crashes. Probably the worst was in Switzerland, when that track is actually, it's made by hand. So the track workers go to the lake in the center of St. Moritz, cut ice blocks out of it, and then construct a track that is a mile long out of these ice blocks. And it's sort of built into the ground, but that it means that the track is a little bit different every year, and sometimes there are quirks in the curves. And one year I could not get the finish curve right, so I kept coming out of the curve and hitting the left-hand wall. And as it turned out, my last run before the race, I hit the left-hand wall and bounced off of the sled, which normally is not that big a deal. And it was after the timing light, so it didn't affect my time on the track. However, there had been a bobsled race the week before us, and they have brakes, and it chews up the ice in the outruns. So the track workers had just sprayed the ice chunks with water. So there were these huge ice chunks that I bounced onto on my backside going like 70 miles an hour.
Wow.
And I did it two. I did it 2 runs in a row. I literally couldn't sit down for like 4 days. It was terrible. But luckily that was about the worst of my crashes, I would say.
That is absolutely incredible. My next question was going to be approximately how fast you think you were going when you crashed, but you said around 70 miles an hour. That is beyond comprehension for me.
Yep. It definitely is a sport that you need to love speed to do it. And a lot of people ask me, "Oh, weren't you afraid when you did the sport?" And I always say that it's not a sport you can do if you are afraid, because as you're sitting on the start ramp and ready to go down a track, close to over 80 miles an hour. You can't be thinking about what might go wrong. You have to be completely focused on how it's going to go right, and being sort of very much present in the moment, because luge, it's so fast that there's not really time to think on the way down the track. So by the time you get to the start at a race, you need to have completely prepared yourself, that the track inside and out. It requires not only a lot of runs on the track itself, physical runs down the track, but a lot of visualization and a lot of sort of internalizing what the track is like.
Ever since I finished my career as a Division I All-American athlete, I longed for not only the clarity of purpose that I had as an athlete, but also the accountability that comes with aspiring for big goals with a team of like-minded people. Then I discovered mastermind groups. Masterminds are small groups of like-minded people who get together either in person or over Skype or just over the phone to provide support, feedback, and advice to other members of the group. So I dove in and I learned all I could about mastermind groups, and then I finally launched my own. And the change was instant. I regained the accountability of being part of a group of like-minded, hardworking individuals who hold me to a higher standard. My mastermind group helps me get feedback and advice and even validation when I'm making big decisions in my life. And I have clarity and focus and accountability again, just like when I was an athlete. I've now facilitated dozens of high performers in mastermind groups. I'm talking Olympians and MBAs and neurosurgeons and professional athletes and entrepreneurs and lots of others. I've taken everything you need to know to start your own mastermind group, and I've put it into a short 10-page ebook titled The Quick and Easy Guide to Starting Your Own Mastermind Group in 30 Days or Less. Grab a copy of this free ebook by going to jimharshawjr.com/mastermind. That's jimharshawjr.com/mastermind. So let's talk about fear for a second, because you say you can't have fear when you're at the top about to go down. But logically, there's fear there. If you start thinking logically about what you're going to do is fly down a track at 86 miles an hour, then fear could easily show up. So you're operating despite this fear, or you're pushing this fear aside. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And I think, wrestling was a little bit the same for me. You're stepping out and you're going to battle with another boy or another man. And there's pain that comes along with that, even if you win. And there's humiliation if you lose. You're in front of an audience and a crowd, and it's just there's a lot of fear there. How did you overcome that fear or push that fear aside so that you could actually focus? Because a lot of people have a fear of public speaking, or a fear of talking to their boss, or a fear of starting a business, or fear of whatever the case might be in the real world. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that fear?
So I will say that I competed on the national team for 14 years. So from when I was 15 in high school in 1985 through the Olympics in Nagano in 1998. And really, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit and then tell you about sort of the
No, you can't do this. It's my show. You can't do that.
Yeah, but I'm a lawyer, so
that's right.
It's in my nature. We can debate. But I really, for almost all of that time, I did not experience fear. It was more of looking at the track as a challenge. Like how can I get my best time today? What do I need to do differently to get through curve 10 more smoothly and transition into the next curve better? So I really did not have fear for most, nearly all of my career. My last year was 97, 98, and that culminated with the Olympics in Japan. I was going into the last World Cup race. I was second in the overall standings for the World Cup. The final race was on a track in Altenburg, Germany, which it's about as far east in Germany as you can get. So it was in the former East Germany, and I raced there when it was still communist East Germany. And I'd won on that track. I was the first non-German to beat all of the Germans on that track. So I loved it. It was tough. It was a really fast and difficult run. But that year, the Germans decided that, and I'll also mention that it was a track when it was built, it was decided that it was too fast. So the men, who normally go from one start, and then the women in doubles go from another start, usually like two curves down the track. They moved the starts down. So the men were racing from the women's and doubles starts, and the women in doubles went from the junior start. However, that year the Germans said, oh, okay, we're going to put everyone back up to we're going to have everyone go up to the original starts, except no one other than the Germans had training from those starts.
Oh,
wow. So it was not particularly fair in all of our opinions. And I was the kind of athlete where I crashed like once a year. And I would say one of my faults as an athlete was I probably thought a little bit too much, and I wanted to be a little too much in control. So I on the last run from the old women's start, I crashed, and it happens, but I couldn't figure out why I crashed. And then I had to move up to the men's start. And then you're going 20 miles an hour faster. Everything comes a lot more quickly, and your timing has to be, like right on. So I actually crashed then 2 more times in the next 2 days. So I crashed 3 times. It was really painful, and I was afraid. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know how to fix it. I know that when I crash, it's really painful. And the last time that I crashed, my sled got away from me, and you try to hang on to your sled because if you crash and the sled gets away on its own, it might get damaged, and they're really difficult to fix. And it's a very, highly technical piece of equipment. So I slid on my backside about 3 curves, stopped right in front of my coach. And I said, that's it. I'm not going to go. And he said, and he's from Liechtenstein. He said, yeah, but you must go. And I was like, yeah, okay. You can go get on my sled. I don't want to go. And I didn't. And I had never experienced that before in my whole luge career. So I thought, oh my gosh. And the other sort of complicating factor was that year the Germans had also changed the rules, and you could not drop your worst World Cup race from the total results. So I had to race. I was second overall. I had to race. I had no confidence in myself. I was afraid to get on the sled, and it was one of the most difficult things I've done. But I sort of had to dig down pretty deep and sort of remember I've won on this track. I know this track. This is really more an issue of having faith in myself and believing that I can do it, which I did. I got on the sled. I didn't win. I was 5th in the race. I didn't win a medal, but I stayed in the top 3 overall. So it was really difficult because that was sort of physical fear, or
Sure.
fear of physically injuring yourself. But that it takes I think it requires you to have some faith in yourself and in your abilities. And I think that applies whether, you're talking about sport or, as you said, public speaking or whatever it is in the business context. Faith in yourself is hugely important.
And how do you feel those experiences have shaped you in your professional career and your career since you've retired?
I think there is so much to be learned as an athlete, whether you are an Olympian or you compete in high school or college or on whatever level. And I know that I certainly have learned things and acquired skills along the way that have helped me in since. And I in my practice as a lawyer and now teaching at NYU. But I would say a couple of things probably are persistence, and it's just rarely does anything come easily, or rarely does anything that is worthwhile and something that you really want. It takes effort, and it usually takes a lot of persistence. So I think having persistence comes more easily to some people than others, and some of that is really sort of viewing opportunities or difficulties, obstacles, challenges as opportunities and chances for you to learn and to make yourself better. So I, on the persistence front, I competed in 4 Olympics. It's a lot of athletes have the chance to do one. I was very lucky and also very persistent and made it to 4 games. But I would say that's definitely one thing. Another one would be sort of preparation, because once you get to the race or the competition or to your if you're a lawyer, you get to court or to your boardroom meeting, whatever it is, you need to sort of be in the place where you have done absolutely everything you can to be ready and to perform. So much of that, it's like, you see the Olympics, or people see the Olympics on TV now every 2 years with the alternating summer and winter. And we see these sort of moments of glory and people performing their like lifetime best in a moment. But so much work has gone on prior to, and this as an athlete, so much work happens before you get on the mat or on your sled at the start. And I think that's something that I certainly value in my professional career, sort of the ability to know what needs to be done in advance.
And I think that's an important point to reflect on, because so many of us, we go through the world and we see successful people. We see people like you, Cameron, who, you were a multiple-time Olympian and you're this elite athlete, and you graduated from an Ivy League school and now you got your law degree, and you've been a part of all these other organizations and on the board of the U.S. Olympic Committee, and we see that and we think it's just easy for you. We think success came easy for you, right? People don't know the days and the hours and the moments where you went through, pain and suffering is the best way to really put it. I mean, when you're going 70 miles down a track and you're going over chunks of ice, I mean, you're going through physical pain and suffering, and there's just the emotional and psychological grind that you have to go through over years in the self-doubt, in the work, in the early mornings and late nights, and all of this struggle to be, to reach the level that you reach. But that stuff also happens in other areas of your life. I mean, just to become an attorney and you're teaching at NYU, and I mean, you're doing these amazing things. So there's a lot more that meets the eye. And this is I'm really talking to the listener now. There's so much that these other people do, that we look at, that we aspire to be like, and to these role models that we look at, and we don't realize all of the work that goes into that. And those moments of self-doubt and of pain and suffering that you're going through right now, and whether it's relationships or your health or trying to build a business or make more money or whatever the case might be, all of that is normal. That's part of the journey. And it's just often lost because we see Cameron on TV at the Olympics, and that's all we see is that moment.
I completely agree with you, and I also agree that it's so easy to look at someone who's successful in business, whether it's their own business, or maybe they're at a very high level as an executive in a company or what have you. And I think we all need to understand that everyone out there has put in the time and the work. And when you do that, it's like when you do that, then these opportunities become available, and you think like, oh wow, it's amazing that I had the chance to do this. But I'm a firm believer in those opportunities become available after you've done the work yourself. And just another point, sort of adding on to what you said, like you never know what's going on in someone's life. It's easy to see the exterior and see, someone who's very successful in various areas of their lives, but, they may have a whole variety of challenges and difficulties going on that's not public. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, like that we all have difficulties, challenges, obstacles, and opportunities to learn along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, talking about these opportunities, I would imagine some of your background has opened the door for some of these opportunities for you to be on the U.S. Olympic Committee board, and you're part of the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Switzerland. What is that?
So the Court of Arbitration for Sport, or CAS, it's based in Lausanne, Switzerland, and it includes about 300 arbitrators worldwide. So I am one of those 300. I'm one of, I think, fewer than 30 women in that group. So the arbitrators of CAS hear cases relating to sport, essentially. So disputes including doping disputes, eligibility cases. So if an athlete thinks they should have made an Olympic team, but their sports organization didn't apply the rules correctly, they can go to arbitration and have neutral arbitrators, either a panel of one or three, hear their case. And also CAS hears a lot of soccer cases in Europe, because there are oftentimes disputes about the transfer fees paid from one club to another. But so I've been on CAS for the last couple of years, and I currently have I'm on panels for 3 different doping cases, which I really enjoy it. I liked being a lawyer. I'm really glad that I had the 10 years of mostly litigation experience. I did a lot of intellectual property work and represented some athletes in doping cases, but I'm really enjoying the sort of being on the other side of the table as an arbitrator now.
Yeah, and you served on the U.S. Olympic Committee board too, is that right?
Yep, I was. So when I was still an athlete, and then into part of my time in law school, I was on the board at USOC board of directors for 8 years, and I was appointed to a task force to come up with a new governance structure for the USOC, because they were having issues with a number of both CEOs and presidents of the organization sort of through the revolving door over a couple of years. So Congress, John McCain's office primarily, suggested that the USOC come up with a new governance structure, or Congress would happily do it for them. So I was one of 10 people who came up with the new structure of the organization, which I feel really fortunate that I've had a lot of different. I've experienced sport in a lot of different ways as an athlete, as in governance of sport. I've taught at the International Olympic Academy in Greece.
Yeah.
And
what is that?
So the IOA is affiliated with the International Olympic Committee, and they have various educational programs over the course of the year. The biggest program they have is in the summer. It's called the Session for Young Participants, and the IOA invites each of the 205 National Olympic Committees to send delegates who are younger than 35 to the session. So you're there for 17 days, which is the length of an Olympic Games, but you are talking about sort of the Olympic values and philosophy, and hearing from people. The year that I went, there were people from more than 100 different countries at the session. So it's really rare that you have an opportunity like that. And for me, it was, felt like it really rounded out my Olympic experience. But since then, I've been back a couple of times as a professor to teach in a postgraduate session that they have for PhD and master's students. So I love Greece, and I think one time I will not come back from Greece.
Cameron, your email signature says, quote, Olympian, lawyer, advocate for using sports to make a positive change in the world. How does sport make a positive change in the world, and how do you do that?
Well, I will tell you a little bit about what I do. And I think as an Olympian, I'm really fortunate in the experiences that I've had. And I think it's important for me to use the platform that I have to to give back and to do some good in the world. So I am an athlete ambassador for two different nonprofit organizations. One of them is called Kids Play International, and it was founded by one of my fellow Olympians, Tracy Evans. She competed in aerials, which I think is even crazier than luge.
Yeah.
But Kids Play International uses sport to promote gender equity, and we have a community sports program in Rwanda. I've been twice with the organization, and I have to say, even with all of my sort of like vast amount of experiences as an athlete and as an Olympian, it was really one of the best things I have ever done that involved sport. So our program now is it's on a year-round basis. We train local coaches, and the programs are structured so boys and girls have opportunities to interact on the sports field in ways that enables them to learn from each other and to recognize sort of the value of each other as sort of equally contributing members of first team and then off the field as well. So Kids Play is doing some amazing things, and I love the focus of that. I'm also an athlete ambassador for another organization, which is called Athlete Ally. And they promote,
I'm familiar with it.
So inclusion of the LGBT community in sports. And I reached out to them. It was the year before the Olympics in Sochi. So that was February 2014. The summer before that, Russia passed a law that basically prohibited what they called propaganda of non-traditional relationships. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And the Olympics is supposed to be about inclusion.
Sure.
And it says that in the charter. So I contacted them and helped them sort of craft their what they ended up calling the Principle 6 campaign, which is based on Principle 6 of the Olympic Charter, which essentially talks about how the Olympic movement should be inclusive of everyone. So I use my experience to through these different ways in sport to help others.
That's great. And for the listener, I'll have links to those organizations that you mentioned in the action plan. And Cameron, so I've got a sort of a few somewhat rapid fire questions to wrap up here with. And the first one is, what action can the listener take in the next 24 to 48 hours to really start moving towards their goals? So you've accomplished quite a bit in your life, and my listeners really tune in because they love hearing from people like you, and they really like to walk away with something practical and actionable. So is there an action you can recommend that the listener can take in, like I said, the next 24 to 48 hours?
Yeah. And this is coming now from I'll put my professor hat on. And one thing I do at NYU is I oversee our internship program with our undergraduate students. And they're required to do 600 hours of internship, which means, finding an internship in New York City, it can be a little bit daunting. And one thing I tell all of them to do, and I think this is useful no matter where you are in your career. So I would say to connect with someone in the next 2 days. So maybe it's someone, let's say you're thinking about making a change in your job, or, working at a different company, or just trying to figure out how to be better in the position that you're currently in. Find someone, and I would recommend LinkedIn because it's a great way to sort of see who does what in different functions in different organizations, and a good way to do a little due diligence about what you're interested in. But I would say connect with someone, and most people, when they get a request from someone, even if it's kind of like the cold call email, if you ask for, you don't want to ask for a job, but you want to ask for information, and people are usually happy to talk a little bit about themselves and what they do. And I think it's so important to do this information gathering when you're thinking about a job change or just ways to improve in your current job. Because a lot of times people have perceptions of like, oh, I think this is what a sports agent does. But then when you actually speak with one, it may be something different entirely. So I think it's useful for that. And making connections is so critical in any kind of professional work.
Yeah, that's a great action item. And do you have a favorite book or books that you could recommend?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and so the one I am going to recommend is Spark Joy by Marie Kondo, and maybe you've talked about this on your show before.
I think it's come up once, yeah.
Okay, so it is the subtitle of the class is An Illustrated Masterclass on the Art of Organizing and Tidying Up, and I think it is. It's just, it's for me, I find it to be easier to sort of think and have energy, which you really need. Like if you're doing something creative or thinking about making a change or energy to write or whatever it is, I find I have much more of that when my sort of space and things are at a minimum and organized and tidy. So
yeah, me too. That's a great recommendation. I love that. I gotta add that to my reading list for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And last question, Cameron, if you could sit down with your 20-year-old self, you could flash back and sit down across the table, looking eye to eye with your 20-year-old self. What's one piece of advice that you would share with yourself?
Okay, I would tell myself that there is something to be learned in every situation. So even if you are in a job that you know is not your ideal job, maybe you learn how to even something simple as, make a PowerPoint deck, or you learn how to navigate office politics, or you learn how to do something. There's something to be learned everywhere. And because, these paths that we're all on, you hardly ever take a straight line from where you are to where you want to go. So, you may work in a variety of different jobs or do a number of different things before you get to a place where you really want to be. And I think it's so critical to, in each of those stops along the way to figure out what can I learn here. And not be, and I think that also contributes and allows you to be positive about your situations. So learn something, no matter like what it is you're doing or where you are.
Cameron, this has been really great. A lot of really practical, actionable advice here. So thank you so much for that. And thanks for the insight into luge. I mean, what a fascinating! I can't wait till the Winter Olympics again. So I actually know somebody who's done that at a high level.
Now you have to get on a sled.
Oh, do I have to?
Maybe.
I actually do. I would definitely do that. I would if I had the opportunity. So one day I'll put that on my bucket list. Get on a luge sled.
All right, perfect.
Cameron, if the listeners want to interact with you and find you're not like some of my guests, they're selling something or they have a website and whatnot, like. But I don't think you necessarily do, but if there's people that want to interact with you or find you, how can they do that?
Let's see. So I am on Twitter, at Cameron Myler. Also on Instagram. We didn't talk about my being a photographer and artist, but I am that too. So Instagram is a good way to find me. Also just at Cameron Myler. And my website is in the process of being upgraded, so that will also be back up again soon, and that's also just CameronMyler.com.
All right, excellent. So for the listener, I will, as always, have links to everything that she just mentioned there. So just grab the action plan. Go to JimHarshawJr.com/action. Cameron, thank you so much for making time to come on the show.
Thank you, Jim.
And for the listener, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.